All right, time for weekly outlook. Um, let me know if my audio is okay. Uh, I might start getting lower and lower depending on how far away I veer from my microphone. Got a new monitor. I'm trying to figure some things out. Can't record on it yet for some reason. But yeah, we'll give it a shot. So I'm back on my old monitor, trying to record this. Anyway, weekly outlook. Last week we did a whole lot of nothing. Basically traded sideways. So let me go to the daily. Right, sideways for the most part. I know we had that shortened week the prior week. Thursday gapped up and trended higher. Friday overnight pulled back, and Friday was another half day and was sideways. And then last week was basically sideways within last week's range, or rather the prior week's range. So forming a multi-day balance here. Both ES and NQ. R2I looks a little different, similar but trending a little higher. They were weak on Friday, but so the focus is what do we do up against this balance, and they look similar. They look similar for the most part. We closed in different places. Most of the profiles look the same. The idea is mostly going to be the same, and we're going to go back to that sideways until otherwise. Right? We have that bulk of value there on ES. You know, shelf, shelf. Basically, last week's value area high and value area low. So, with what we're doing currently during ETH, I'm looking to get long. Usually don't like to get involved on Sundays, so I'll look to see where we open RTH at. If I can get long back at this 6270 area, I'd love to try that. To try to take it up for a rotation back up to the upper end. If we get a failure there, though, right, look for that move away from value back down to prior value. We have a couple downside levels, but we can go over them in a bit. But that's going to be the idea for both ES and NQ. Okay, this is what NQ looks like. Same idea. Sideways until otherwise up against this zone below us, this lower zone and this upper zone. So with what we're currently doing, I'd like to see RTH come in and hold this 870, 870 area. And we talked about this last week, of letting the profile develop, meaning going into last week, we had sort of a pretty balanced profile. Well, we had a composite here before we had those short days Thursday and Friday, and we talked about how buyers wanted to be holding this zone here, right? And we did that. And we talked about how we really need to be watching this on a 15-minute or 30-minute basis, or looking at a TPO, right? A 30-minute basis. And a little easier to spot if we're waiting for that confirmation of a 15-minute or 30-minute close. I know if we're watching order flow down here, I can see sellers sort of dry up and some buyers step in. Sure, we can get involved a little bit below the level, but once this session closes, right, we trade down here. Well, this one, yeah, we trade down here and end the session up here. So we end the session above. Following session establishes value higher. Looks good to get long up against that. So we did. Same idea here. Right, we're seeing this ETH kind of trade lower and spending some time below. Not the best look, but we'll see where the rest of the session what the rest of the session does, and then we'll see what RTH does. And we'll try to get long up against that, right? Regardless of how low we go, if we can sort of close back above this and establish value back into it, with a letter period close above, or a couple letter period closes above, right? That's our signal to sort of get long there. Okay. Try to take it back up to that upper end, regardless of how slow the move is. I know last week it was slow, right? This whole session, we kind of just kept working up against this, up against this, up against this, even close the session down there. But it's still up. The trade plan was still valid, right? As weak as it was, the trade plan was still valid. So let's try to not get caught up in that. I'll try to do a better job this week of staying in the trade if that's the case. Right, so that's what we'll be looking for, is what do we do up against where we spent last week trading. Pretty tight range, and if we look at just the composite the last couple of weeks put together, a little tough, but the idea is still there, right? You got a bell curve and kind of missing a little bit of excess to the upside, if you ask me. So I'd like to go see those new highs, and what RTH is trying to do, it seems like that's the case. Right, so what ETH is doing, we'll see what RTH does, and go from there. Right. If we do see some weakness, meaning if we do start trading back below the 6270s and this 22,850s, 870s, right, we'll kind of look to take it back down into some levels below us. First big one being 740. You've really only got a small shelf down here. I know it's not too far away, but a small shelf nonetheless. And then you got that prior all-time high, like not too far below us. I'd like to go see that. We have the 660 area that we never tested. I was thinking we'd maybe go visit it and sort of see more rotational activity down here before we like higher, but we kind of had these two sessions and this session kind of held. So is it possible we sort of make a bigger, longer term balance, like encompassing this entire area? Sure. We'll take it day by day. And when that time comes, when buyers can't hold this area, we'll sort of be patient as buyers. I'm not going to be eager to be like really putting on size as we trade down into these areas. I'll be a lot more discretionary if that's the case, right? And sort of look at order flow, maybe even wait till the session closes before using that information to trade the next session a little more aggressively. Okay. I don't know how to think about this if you're really looking to sell this thing. I'm a buyer most of the time, so I'm gonna be looking for buy opportunities regardless of where we're trading. And if it's not our time, like be patient, right? Like if we're gonna, let's say, break the balance to the downside, go into a period where we want time frame down for a couple sessions, so be it, right? We just have to sit around and be patient for buyers, look for maybe scalp opportunities. Right? Hopefully we don't have to do that anytime soon. I don't think we will, but let's just keep that in the back of our minds. We don't want to be only looking to long on trend days down. It's well, regardless of whether it's a trend day down, like usually I'm able to sit around. Sometimes I will get involved, but I know my spot, and I know that I have to be in and out. Can't really be holding for a long time. So I'll take that approach with indexes to start the week. And I don't think there are any other assets I wanted to look at. RTY, I think last week's play is still valid. Trade into the singles and trade back into value, right? Like whether get a reaction off of the singles, maybe you want to get involved there. Like I might do with some starters if I see a decent enough reaction out of there. But I'd love to see that get filled, not filled, but maybe even a partial fill or tap. Trade back into value to get long for some new highs on the year. We missed that up. We didn't get that opportunity last week. We just put on some longs above this 2260s for a nice, pretty easy trend day up that day, but didn't get the play I really wanted to see last week. So maybe we get it this week. We'll wait for that. So the equity side, I don't think I was looking for anything that specific. There were like very, very few plays I was looking at. I think financial is a good one to keep an eye on. All right, basically closed on almost an inside week. So I'll sort of be paying attention to last week's lows, these two weekly lows. If we can reclaim that, let's say we open lower, it looks like we're going to open a tad lower. If we can reclaim that, I think stay bullish the financial sector. They had a slowdown last week, hence this weekly candle on the index or on the fund. Eli Lilly was another one that sort of piqued in my interest. Kind of back at this like point of control here, right after doing a little look below these two big pivot lows, three big pivot lows. I had to retest that low or sort of close by and then got bid up against it, and now maybe potentially a look off of that point of control. So I'll be looking for this one. I don't think I want it pulling back further than 780. We'll call it 775. All right, I think that'll be my line in the sand. I'm just gonna get long at Monday, I think. I think that's fair. Risk 775. Or forget. Maybe we don't want it pulling back below Friday's lows. Yeah, maybe risk 780 on the play. Get long at Monday open. Risk 780. I like it. So we'll do that. Google, there's another one. I know we grabbed longs on this session here into that zone. Then we grabbed a couple more different strikes up here. I think it was this session. All right, we grabbed the 182.5s. Those are doing okay this week. We really need to be holding not this 177 level, but another one. I do not want Google trading back below 178.5. Does it have, can it retest 177 or this 160, 176.5 again? Maybe. It'd make it a little tougher if we're trying to like really keep risk tight. We already grabbed the cons we wanted. Maybe we grab some. We'll see what we do up like the first hour of trade, and then sort of maybe look to get some contracts for after earnings. Because all the ones I have now are for this week. I think that is about it. Yeah, I think that wraps up the weekly plan. All right, so have a great rest of your week.